And when Rashida finally sat across from Yandy, everyone watching understood this wasn't going to be calm. This was collision. The silence before the first word was unbearable. Even the scrape of a chair sounded like glass breaking. People leaned in, waiting for detonation. Rashida struck first, her voice sharp, her tone slicing through the silence. She accused Yandy of speaking recklessly about her marriage, her household, her family. Her words landed like blades. Yandy didn't flinch, not even for a second. She tilted her chin, smirk curling, eyes steady. Her reply dripped with venom. She claimed Rashida was obsessed, unable to stop circling her name. She accused her of dragging her into the spotlight week after week. It wasn't just conversation, it was declaration. A small spark over a podcast turned instantly savage. Secrets poured out. Old grudges surfaced. The tension burst open, racing like fire across dry fields. Marriage documents, DNA rumors, whispers about children, topics too personal to mention in public were suddenly out in the open. The weight in the room was unbearable. Each pause felt like thunder rolling in. Neither one backed away, neither even blinked. This wasn't exchange. This was battle. The air dared someone to interrupt, to break the standoff, to ignite the flames completely. Rashida's arms folded across her chest, her eyes narrowed, fixed on Yandy like steel. This wasn't performance. It was conviction. For Rashida, the issue wasn't just podcasts or interviews. It wasn't gossip or online chatter. This had become personal. She believed Yandy had been fueling drama deliberately, spreading stories, stirring chaos. She didn't want explanation. She wanted accountability. But Yandy had no intention of giving it. She leaned back, smile etched on her face. Her words cut sharper than her smirk. She insisted nothing she said was fabricated. She only repeated truths others had already hinted at. If the public was already asking questions, she claimed she simply responded. Her defense poured fuel onto the fire. The balance in the room shifted. Voices rose. The restraint vanished. Viewers at home could already sense it. This argument wasn't going to cool, it was going to explode. Rashida's tone sharpened. She accused Yandy of deflecting, of using her name as cover for her own problems. She declared that the lies, the gossip, the whispers, all of it, had finally caught up. Her voice shook, not with weakness, but with rage, restrained for too long. Yandy's clapback was immediate. She snapped that Rashida was the one fixated, the one feeding blogs tossing sparks into gasoline, desperate to stay relevant. The words landed heavy. For a brief moment, silence returned. But it was different this time, a silence that screamed louder than shouting. Those close by shifted uncomfortably. They knew this wasn't television fluff. This wasn't scripted drama. This was raw. This was layered. This was war. Truth and exaggeration blurred into one. Each accusation bled into the next. Every statement sounded final, irreversible, and then realization spread across the room. What started as whispers had turned into wildfire. Two women, two reputations, two families, everything colliding beneath the glare of cameras. And as this opening tension unfolded, one fact became impossible to ignore. Nothing about this night would fade. This wasn't just reality TV. This was combat. And the opening shots had already been fired. The moment the first accusations left Rashida's lips, the spark ignited. Her words weren't casual. They were sharp, direct, aimed to wound. She declared Yandy had been meddling in her personal life for far too long, talking about her marriage, dissecting her choices, throwing careless comments into the public arena. Yandy's laugh cut the tension like broken glass. A cold, hollow laugh that didn't match the anger brewing in her eyes. She shot back instantly, claiming Rashida was exaggerating, twisting things, fabricating drama to look like a victim. Her voice dripped with scorn as she asked, "Why do you even care what I say if your house is really in order?" The room shifted. Those words landed with weight. Rashida didn't hesitate. She snapped back, calling Yandy desperate for attention, accusing her of clinging to any spotlight she could find. Her voice grew louder, each word like a strike, each sentence layered with frustration that had been bottled for years. Yandy's smirk hardened. Her reply came steady, calculated, but filled with venom. She claimed Rashida couldn't stand seeing her shine, that the real problem wasn't gossip, it was jealousy. She accused Rashida of lurking, watching, obsessing over her every move, desperate to find fault. The exchange grew harsher. Shade turned into open fire. Words became weapons. Rashida pressed forward. She accused Yandy of manufacturing storylines just to stay relevant, of using other people's names to keep her own alive. She asked why Yandy never let her family speak for themselves. Why she always positioned herself as the savior while tearing others down. The line hit hard, but Yandy wasn't rattled. Her voice rose, biting back with accusations of hypocrisy. She shouted that Rashida had spent years sweeping her own scandals under the rug, hiding problems while pretending her life was perfect. She claimed Rashida's image was a facade, carefully polished, while cracks beneath the surface grew wider every year. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The words stung because they rang too close to whispers already circulating outside. Rashida leaned forward, fury in her eyes. She reminded Yandy that unlike her, she didn't have to fabricate drama to stay on screens. She built businesses. She built stability. She didn't rely on manufactured chaos. Every syllable was packed with defiance. Yandy shot back with venom, dismissing Rashida accomplishments as hollow trophies. She claimed the businesses were props, distractions from the real dysfunction at home. She insisted that behind the storefronts and polished images was a reality Rashida never wanted exposed. The energy in the room burned hotter. Voices overlapped. Accusations collided. For a moment, it felt like no one was listening anymore. They weren't exchanging words. They were exchanging blows. Each line cut deeper, each reply harsher than the one before. Rashida's tone cracked, but not with weakness, with rage. She said Yandy thrived on inserting herself into conflicts that weren't hers, stirring fires she never had to put out. She called her manipulative. She called her selfish. And then the sharpest line yet. You don't just ruin friendships, you destroy families. The words froze the room. The silence afterward was deafening. Yandy's eyes narrowed, her smirk gone. Her voice trembled with fury as she shot back. She accused Rashida of projecting, of blaming others for pain she created herself. She reminded her that if her family was breaking, it wasn't because of outside voices. It was because of secrets inside her own house. The escalation was now unstoppable. Every word felt like a hammer, every retort like a counterstrike. The rhythm of their exchange no longer resembled an argument. It sounded like battle drums. Yandy accused Rashida of hiding truth from the public, while pretending to be untouchable. Rashida countered by calling Yandy a parasite, living off the chaos she engineered. The crowd whispered. The cameras caught every twitch, every grimace, every flare of anger. The energy was suffocating. Rashida's hands tightened as her words cut sharper. She declared she was done being silent, done letting Yandy play puppeteer with her name. She wouldn't allow her narrative to be twisted anymore. But Yandy met her fire with equal heat. She refused to yield. She claimed Rashida could try to silence her all she wanted, but the truth would always seep through. She insisted the world already saw through the act, and all Rashida was doing was delaying the inevitable. Their voices clashed like steel. Neither woman blinked. Neither stepped back. The first exchange was no longer just talk. It was war. And the war had only begun. The shouting match didn't cool. It only evolved into something sharper, darker, and far more personal. What started as accusations over reckless comments now twisted into claims of obsession. Rashida leaned in, her voice brimming with fury. She told Yandy she couldn't stop mentioning her name, couldn't resist using her life as a storyline, couldn't go a month without dragging her into headlines. You don't live your life, she snapped. You live mine. The words hit like a hammer. Yandy didn't falter. She fired back, her tone dripping with mockery. She accused Rashida of being paranoid, of thinking the world revolved around her. She sneered that nobody was checking for her like she believed. And if blogs kept publishing her name, it was because she handed them content herself. The crowd gasped. The air grew heavier. Rashida's jaw tightened. She claimed Yandy had relationships with bloggers, feeding them snippets, planting stories designed to paint her in chaos. She swore that every time she scrolled, her family was being dissected, her marriage, blaming others instead of owning her reality. The tension grew unbearable. Each line stung more than the last. Rashida's eyes narrowed. She shouted that Yandy thrived on toxicity, always inserting herself, always feeding narratives, always working behind the scenes like a puppet master. She swore Yandy wanted her downfall. Yandy's face hardened. She spat that Rashida needed to stop playing victim. She reminded her that gossip sites didn't invent her scandals. They exposed them. And if the world laughed, it was because the cracks were already visible. The crowd murmured. Shock rippled through the air. Then came the dagger. Rashida accused Yandy of being obsessed. Not with her mistakes, but with her life, with her stability, with her family. She said Yandy couldn't stand watching her succeed, couldn't stand seeing her stay married, couldn't stand her longevity. You want what I have, Rashida declared, but you'll never have it. The words exploded like dynamite. Yandy's expression shifted from smirk to fury. She said Rashida was insecure, clinging to a marriage full of fractures while pretending it was perfect. She accused her of using family as a shield, while ignoring the truth simmering underneath. Her voice cut sharp as glass. "You're not inspiration, you're denial dressed up as success." The atmosphere trembled with tension. Rashida fought back instantly. She reminded Yandy that she had no authority to judge her marriage when her own house was far from spotless. She said Yandy hid her own flaws behind smoke and mirrors, all while tearing down others for entertainment. The exchange turned vicious. Every accusation revealed another layer of venom. Rashida swore Yandy fueled headlines deliberately. Yandy swore Rashida's scandals needed no help going viral. Rashida called Yandy manipulative. Yandy branded Rashida envious. Each line was a weapon, each word a bullet. The debate wasn't about who was right anymore. It was about destruction. Rashida declared she was tired of her name being dragged into clickbait, tired of her children's lives being dissected, tired of watching her marriage turned into gossip fodder. She accused Yandy of orchestrating the storm. Yandy's rebuttal came fast, her tone savage. She said she never needed Rashida's name to stay relevant, that her own presence commanded attention, that the only reason Rashida kept accusing her was because she wanted to believe someone else was responsible for the chaos in her life. The words were daggers. Rashida's fury reached a breaking point. She shouted that Yandy wanted her downfall so badly she couldn't see straight, that she built her brand on destruction, that she fed drama because peace didn't suit her. Her voice cracked with emotion. Yandy leaned forward, eyes blazing. She shot back that she wasn't obsessed, she was exposing. And if Rashida couldn't handle the truth, that was her burden to bear. The clash was relentless. Each sentence grew louder, sharper, deadlier. Rashida insisted she was done letting her story be manipulated by outside voices. Yandy mocked her for thinking she could silence gossip when gossip was already the language of their world. It was obsession versus denial, manipulation versus exposure, and neither woman gave ground. Every headline they argued about seemed to manifest in real time. Every blog post they mentioned suddenly felt like a prophecy. By the end of the exchange, the room wasn't just tense, it was suffocating. Every breath carried the weight of years of bitterness. Every glance promised another explosion. And as voices finally dropped to a simmer, one truth was clear. The battle wasn't about a blog. It wasn't about a headline. It was about obsession, about envy, about who truly controlled the narrative. And neither Rashida nor Yandy was ready to surrender. This was escalation. This was fire. And it was only getting started. Ed. The tone shifted from bitter accusations to something far more lethal. This wasn't about gossip anymore. This was about home, about children, about the most fragile pieces of a person's life. Rashida's voice dropped lower, her words sharp but steady. She accused Yandy of daring to cross a sacred line. She claimed Yandy dragged her household into public debate, questioning the strength of her marriage, disrespecting the vows she fought to protect. Her voice quivered with rage. "You don't mention my husband. You don't mention my children. You don't get to use my family for your storyline." The silence afterward was suffocating. Yandy leaned forward, her tone cutting with deliberate precision. She said Rashida couldn't keep pretending her marriage papers weren't already in circulation, that the rumors hadn't been whispered for years. She alleged that the cracks in her union weren't manufactured, they were documented. Gasps echoed as her words hung heavy in the air. Rashida's face hardened. She shot back that Yandy had no business speaking on her household when her own wasn't flawless. She spat that Yandy hid behind carefully staged moments, shielding the real dysfunction that bubbled inside her walls. The insults grew heavier, the blows more personal. Yandy smirked, but her voice cut like a blade. She accused Rashida of clinging to a broken marriage only to maintain an image, claiming she stayed not for love, but for survival. She questioned whether loyalty meant anything when the foundation had already been fractured. Rashida's fury boiled over. Her words came like fire, trembling but fierce. She said Yandy had no right to comment on her decisions, no right to weaponize her marriage papers, no right to drag her children into a spectacle. "This is my family," she declared, "not a prop for your entertainment." But Yandy didn't step back. She pressed forward, voice rising, tone relentless. She said Rashida's children already lived under the shadow of public scandal because of choices Rashida herself had made. She claimed the blogs didn't invent stories, they reflected what was visible to everyone. The weight of her words was devastating. Rashida's voice cracked, but the fire inside remained unbroken. She told Yandy that dragging children into conflict was beyond cruelty. It was unforgivable. She said Yandy crossed a line that could never be undone. Yandy's eyes narrowed, her tone ice cold. She argued that Rashida had paraded her family on camera for years, profiting from storylines centered on private pain. She claimed she wasn't the one exploiting them. Rashida was. The audience gasped at the venom. Rashida's response was immediate, her fury undeniable. She snapped that Yandy's accusations were hollow, rooted in envy. She insisted that her children would never be pawns, never tools, never sacrificed for fame. Her voice rang with defiance. But Yandy came back sharper, harder, more vicious. She said Rashida's family cracks had been visible long before she mentioned them, that what she exposed was already out in the open, whispered in every corner of the industry. The argument spiraled into raw territory. Rashida accused Yandy of being heartless, of disrespecting bonds that should remain untouchable. She called her cold, calculated, obsessed with dismantling the things she could never build herself. Yandy hit back with a final brutal strike. She said Rashida's marriage was a contract, not a commitment, a performance, not a partnership, a facade polished for cameras but crumbling in reality. The words landed like a bomb. For a moment, silence reigned, heavy, absolute, the kind of silence that chills the skin. Rashida inhaled sharply, her eyes glistening with fury. Her reply cut deep. She declared that, unlike Yandy, she had weathered storms, raised her children with strength, and fought for love even when it hurt. She said Yandy wouldn't understand because she never carried that kind of weight. Her voice shook, but her conviction did not. Yandy's laugh returned, cold, mocking, hollow. She accused Rashida of rewriting her pain into a fairy tale, convincing herself endurance meant victory. She claimed the truth was simple. Rashida stayed because leaving meant admitting failure. The room felt like it could collapse under the weight of the words. Every glance, every expression carried fire. Every sentence struck like lightning. The fight was no longer about scandals, no longer about blogs, no longer about shade. This was blood deep. This was about pride, about loyalty, about the legacy of family. Rashida shouted that Yandy would never comprehend sacrifice, that she thrived on other people's ruin because she had no foundation of her own. She swore her children would never be tainted by the poison Yandy brought into the room. Her voice broke, but her strength did not. Yandy's reply was lethal. She said the poison was already there long before she spoke. She insisted the truth didn't come from her lips. It came from the cracks Rashida tried to hide. The exchange seared like fire against steel. Rashida swore she would protect her family with everything she had, that no rumor, no blog, no bitter rival could dismantle the foundation she built. She shouted that Yandy's obsession would never destroy what love had sustained. But Yandy stood her ground, eyes locked, voice steady. She said love without honesty was nothing, that families built on denial were already doomed. Every sentence felt like the strike of a gavel, every word like a... The cameras hadn't even settled before the atmosphere thickened with electricity. Every breath carried weight, every glance suggested eruption. For weeks, quiet chatter had been building, subtle hints, side conversations, suspicion hanging in the air like fog. And when Rashida finally sat across from Yandy, everyone watching understood this wasn't going to be calm. This was collision. The silence before the first word was unbearable. Even the scrape of a chair sounded like glass breaking. People leaned in, waiting for detonation. Rashida struck first, her voice sharp, her tone slicing through the silence. She accused Yandy of speaking recklessly about her marriage, her household, her family. Her words landed like blades. Yandy didn't flinch, not even for a second. She tilted her chin, smirk curling, eyes steady. Her reply dripped with venom. She claimed Rashida was obsessed, unable to stop circling her name. She accused her of dragging her into the spotlight week after week. It wasn't just conversation, it was declaration. A small spark over a podcast turned instantly savage. Secrets poured out. Old grudges surfaced. The tension burst open, racing like fire across dry fields.